Rita's fork froze halfway to her mouth as Trevor's phone buzzed on the restaurant table. The screen lit up with a message that made her blood run cold. The photo showed Trevor kissing another woman in what looked like a hotel room. But it wasn't just any woman, it was Candace, his secretary. The same Candace who had been sending work updates at midnight. The same Candace who Rita had invited to their Christmas party last year. "Happy anniversary, baby," Trevor said, raising his wine glass with a smile that now looked fake. 5 wonderful years. Rita stared at the phone screen, watching as more photos loaded automatically. Trevor shirtless. Candace in lingerie. Text messages calling each other baby and my love. The timestamp showed these were taken just 2 days ago when Trevor claimed he was at a business conference. "Rita? You okay?" Trevor reached for his phone, but Rita was faster. "Who is this woman?" Rita's voice came out steady, though her hands shook as she held up the phone. Trevor's face went white, then red. Then he did something that surprised Rita even more than finding the photos. He laughed. "Look, Rita, this isn't how I wanted you to find out, but maybe it's better this way." He leaned back in his chair like he was discussing the weather. "Candace and I are in love. Real love. Not this fake marriage we've been pretending to have." The restaurant noise faded to nothing. Rita felt like she was underwater, watching Trevor's mouth move but barely hearing the words. "I was going to tell you after dinner. I've already talked to a lawyer. This doesn't have to be messy, Rita. You can keep the house for now, and I'll make sure you're taken care of until you find your own place." Rita finally found her voice. "Until I find my own place? That's our house, Trevor. I helped buy that house. I've been supporting your business for 5 years while you built your client base." "About that." Trevor reached into his jacket and pulled out a folder. "I had these papers drawn up. Since the business is in my name and most of our assets are tied to my work, it makes sense that I keep the bulk of everything. You'll get your fair share, of course." Rita opened the folder. The divorce papers were already filled out. Trevor had signed them. Everything was going to him: the house, the business, their savings accounts, even her car was somehow listed as his property. "You already filed these?" Rita's voice was barely a whisper. "Yesterday." "Look, Rita, this isn't personal. Candace and I just connect on a level that you and I never did. She understands my work, my ambitions. She's young and exciting and—" He trailed off, probably realizing how cruel he sounded. Rita looked around the expensive restaurant where they'd had their first date. Other couples were laughing, celebrating, living normal lives while hers crumbled into pieces. She thought about all the nights she'd stayed up helping Trevor with his business proposals. All the client dinners she'd hosted. All the time she'd taken care of everything at home so he could focus on work. "How long?" she asked. "Does it matter?" "How long, Trevor?" He sighed like she was being unreasonable. 2 years. Maybe 3. "Look, these things happen. We grew apart. You got comfortable, stopped trying. Candace appreciates me." 3 years. Rita's mind reeled. 3 years of him coming home to her every night after being with another woman. 3 years of "I love you" and anniversary dinners and vacation photos while he built a whole other life behind her back. "I need to go to the bathroom," Rita said, standing up on shaky legs. "Rita, let's be adults about this. The papers are fair. You'll be fine." She walked to the bathroom like a woman in a dream. In the mirror, she saw herself clearly for the first time in years. At 35, she was still beautiful. Her dark skin glowed with health, her hair was perfectly styled, her dress expensive and elegant. She looked successful, confident, happy. But inside she felt like a fool. For 3 years she'd been living a lie. While she was planning their future, Trevor was planning his exit. While she was being the perfect wife, he was comparing her to his young secretary and finding her lacking. Rita splashed cold water on her face and made a decision. Trevor expected her to crumble. He expected her to cry and beg and make this easy for him. He thought she was the same naive woman who'd married him 5 years ago. He was wrong. When Rita walked back to the table, Trevor was on his phone with someone. "Yeah, she took it better than expected. We should be able to move in together next week." "No, she's not going to cause problems." Rita sat down and picked up her wine glass. "You're right, Trevor. I'm not going to cause problems." Trevor smiled, looking relieved. "I'm glad you're being reasonable about this." "I'm going to sign your papers," Rita continued, her voice calm and steady. "But I have one request." "What's that?" Rita smiled for the first time that evening. It wasn't a happy smile. "I want to handle my own lawyer. Just to make sure I understand everything before I sign." "Rita, there's really no need. My lawyer already explained everything. It's all standard." "I insist." Rita's smile widened. After all, as you said, we should be adults about this. Trevor shrugged. Fine. But let's make this quick. Candace and I want to start our lives together. Of course, Rita said sweetly. I wouldn't want to keep you from your happiness. As Trevor called for the check, Rita memorized every detail of his smug expression. The way he kept checking his phone for messages from Candace. The way he acted like he was doing Rita a favor by destroying their marriage. The way he assumed she would just disappear quietly and let him keep everything they'd built together. Rita had spent 5 years being the perfect wife. Now she was going to be something much more dangerous. She was going to be the perfect ex-wife. Rita sat in her car outside the restaurant for 20 minutes after Trevor left. He'd kissed her cheek like nothing had changed, promised to be in touch about the details, and driven away in the BMW she'd helped him buy. Through the restaurant window, she could see their table being reset for the next couple. Her phone buzzed with a text from her sister Denise. How was the anniversary dinner? Did he finally propose? Rita laughed, but it came out more like a sob. Propose? Trevor had done the opposite. He'd destroyed 5 years of marriage in 10 minutes and acted like he was being generous about it. She drove home to their house in the suburbs. Her house too, despite what Trevor's papers claimed. She'd put down half the deposit from her savings when they bought it 3 years ago. She'd picked out the furniture, painted the walls, planted the garden. But apparently, love meant nothing when it came to legal documents. Inside, everything looked the same. Their wedding photo on the mantel. Her books mixed with his on the shelves. Her coffee mug still in the sink from that morning when she'd been excited about their anniversary dinner. Rita walked upstairs to their bedroom and opened Trevor's closet. Half his clothes were gone. The expensive suits, his favorite shoes, his cologne. He'd been planning this for weeks, maybe months. While she'd been picking out the perfect anniversary gift, he'd been packing up his life. She found the gift she'd bought him still wrapped on her dresser. A vintage watch that had cost her 2 months of savings. She'd seen him admiring it in a store window and had gone back the next day to buy it. The receipt was still in the box. $3,200. Rita sat on their bed and finally let herself cry. Not just for the marriage but for the woman she'd been. The woman who'd believed in happy endings and trusted completely. The woman who'd given up her own career dreams to support her husband's business. The woman who'd been so focused on being the perfect wife that she'd forgotten to protect herself. Her phone rang. Trevor. Hey, I forgot to mention. Candace and I are going to the Bahamas next week. Our honeymoon trip, you could say. I'll be gone for 10 days, so that should give you time to look at apartments. Apartments? Rita's voice was hoarse from crying. Well, you can't stay in the house forever. And honestly, it's going to be weird with you there when Candace moves in. She's young, Rita. She doesn't need the stress of an awkward situation. Rita closed her eyes. When is she moving in? Next weekend probably. Look, I know this is hard, but the sooner we make a clean break, the better. For everyone. After he hung up, Rita walked through the house again. This time, she wasn't seeing it as her home. She was seeing it as evidence. The home office where Trevor did his business. The computer he thought she didn't know the password to. The filing cabinets full of documents she'd never bothered to look at because she trusted him. Rita had been married to Trevor for 5 years, but she realized she didn't really know him at all. She knew he liked his coffee black and preferred action movies. She knew he was ambitious and charming and good at making people like him. But she didn't know about his business practices or his finances or apparently his ability to lie for 3 years straight. She made coffee and sat down at Trevor's desk. His computer password was easy, their anniversary date. The same date he'd just destroyed. Rita felt sick at the irony, but she typed it in anyway. Trevor's email was a treasure trove of information. Work emails, client communications, and buried deep in a folder marked personal, emails with Candace going back 3.5 years. Not 3 years like he'd claimed. 3.5 years. Rita read through them, her disgust growing with each message. Trevor hadn't just been having an affair. He'd been planning this exit strategy for over a year. The emails talked about when Rita's out of the picture, and our real life together. Candace had been helping him move assets around, set up accounts Rita didn't know about. One email from 6 months ago made Rita's blood boil. Baby, you're so smart to put everything in the business name. Rita doesn't understand money anyway. She'll probably just sign whatever papers you give her. Women like her always do. They're too emotional to think straight. Rita printed out the emails. All of them. Then she went through Trevor's browser history. More evidence of financial accounts, property records, business transactions she'd never heard of. Trevor had been building a fortress around his assets while she'd been planning their future. By 3 in the morning, Rita had filled an entire box with printed documents. Bank statements showing money transfers she didn't understand. Business records listing Trevor as the sole owner of companies she'd never heard of. Email chains about protecting assets and minimizing exposure. Rita wasn't a lawyer, but she wasn't stupid either. Trevor had been planning this divorce long before tonight. He'd been moving money, changing ownership documents, and setting himself up to walk away with everything while she got nothing. The cruelest part wasn't the cheating. It was the calculation. Trevor hadn't fallen in love and made a mistake. He'd coldly planned to destroy their marriage while stealing everything they'd built together. Rita made a list of everything she'd found. Then she made another list of everyone she needed to call. A lawyer first. Then a private investigator. Then a forensic accountant. Trevor thought she was just the emotional wife who'd sign his papers and disappear quietly. He was about to learn how wrong he was. Rita had always been good at planning. She'd planned their wedding, their vacations, their life together. Now she was going to plan his downfall. By dawn, Rita had a strategy. Trevor expected her to be devastated and helpless. So that's exactly what she'd let him think. She'd cry when he expected her to cry. She'd seem confused about legal matters. She'd appear to be exactly what Candace had called her, too emotional to think straight. While Trevor and Candace celebrated their brilliant plan, Rita would be building her own. Trevor wanted a divorce? Fine. Rita would give him a divorce he'd never forget. The sun came up on a new Rita. Not the naive wife she'd been yesterday. Not the trusting woman who'd believed in happily ever after. Rita was done being the perfect wife. It was time to be the perfect opponent. Rita spent the morning playing her part perfectly. When Trevor came by to get more clothes, she was sitting at the kitchen table in her bathrobe, tissues scattered around her, looking like a woman destroyed. "How are you holding up?" Trevor asked, though his tone suggested he didn't really care about the answer. "I'm trying to process everything," Rita said, letting her voice shake. "I keep thinking this is all a bad dream." Trevor actually looked relieved. "I know this is hard, Rita, but you'll see. In the long run, this is better for both of us. We weren't happy." "You weren't happy," Rita corrected softly. "I was happy. I thought we were building something together." "Rita." Trevor sat down across from her, putting on his concerned face. "You have to admit we've been more like roommates than husband and wife for the past year." The spark was gone. Rita bit back the urge to throw her coffee at him. The spark was gone because he'd been giving his spark to Candace for 3.5 years. But she just nodded sadly. "I guess I didn't notice. I was too focused on taking care of everything here so you could concentrate on work. And I appreciate that. I really do. That's why I want to make sure you're taken care of in the divorce." Trevor reached across the table to pat her hand. "The papers I showed you are generous, Rita. More than generous." Rita looked down at the papers she'd left on the table. The same papers that gave her almost nothing while Trevor kept everything. "I don't understand all the legal language. Maybe I should have someone look at them." Trevor's hand tightened on hers. "There's really no need to complicate things with lawyers. My attorney drew these up to be fair to both of us. Adding more lawyers will just make everything expensive and messy. But shouldn't I understand what I'm signing? Rita, trust me. Have I ever let you down?" Rita almost laughed at the question. Instead, she looked up at him with sad, trusting eyes. "Never. You've always taken care of everything." "Exactly. And I'm taking care of this too." Trevor smiled his charming smile. "Sign the papers and we can both move on with our lives. Clean and simple." After Trevor left with another suitcase of his belongings, Rita called the lawyer she'd researched online. Patricia Williams had 20 years of experience in divorce cases and a reputation for protecting her clients' interests. More importantly, she had experience dealing with hidden assets. "I can see you this afternoon," Patricia said after Rita explained her situation. "Bring any financial documents you can find. Bank statements, tax returns, business records. Everything." Rita spent the rest of the morning gathering evidence. She printed out more emails, made copies of their joint tax returns, and photographed everything in Trevor's home office before he could come back for it. At 2 o'clock, Rita sat in Patricia's office, no longer playing the devastated wife. Patricia was a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s who looked like she'd seen every dirty trick in the book. "Tell me everything," Patricia said. "Don't leave out any details." Rita told her about finding the photos, about Trevor's confident assumption that she'd sign his papers, about the emails discussing moving assets and hiding money. Patricia took notes and asked pointed questions. "How long have you been married?" 5 years. "Did you work during the marriage?" "For the first year, yes. Then Trevor asked me to quit my job to help him build his consulting business. I managed his schedule, handled client communications, organized his files. Basically, I was his unpaid assistant. Did you contribute financially to any of his business ventures? I used my savings to help him start the company. About $50,000. And I helped him get clients through my network from my old job. Patricia nodded. What about the house? We bought it 3 years ago. I put down half the down payment from my savings, $75,000. But somehow his divorce papers list him as the sole owner. Oh. And his business. He says it's all in his name, so I have no claim to it. But I helped build it from nothing. I was there for every late night, every client meeting, every business decision. Patricia leaned back in her chair. Rita, I'm going to be direct with you. Your husband has been planning this divorce for a long time. These papers aren't generous, they're theft. He's trying to walk away with millions while giving you pennies. Millions? Rita's eyes widened. According to these business records you found, his consulting firm is worth at least $2.3 million. The house is worth $800,000. Your joint savings accounts total $200,000. But according to his divorce papers, he's claiming the business is worthless and the house has no equity. Rita felt anger rise in her chest. He told me we should be grateful to break even on the house. He lied. About everything. Patricia pulled out a legal pad. Here's what we're going to do. First, I'm filing a response to his divorce petition that contests everything. Second, I'm requesting a full financial disclosure and asset evaluation. Third, I'm hiring a forensic accountant to trace every penny of your marital assets. Will that work? Rita, you helped build his business. You contributed financially to your marriage. You gave up your career to support his. In this state, that makes you entitled to half of everything you built together. Patricia smiled grimly. Your husband picked the wrong woman to steal from. That evening, Rita got a call from Trevor. He sounded annoyed. Rita, what's this about you hiring a lawyer? I told you that wasn't necessary. I just wanted someone to explain the papers to me, Rita said, keeping her voice meek. Patricia seems very nice. Patricia Williams? Rita, she's a shark. She's going to fill your head with unrealistic expectations and drag this out for months. She said she just wants to make sure I understand everything before I sign. There's nothing to understand. The papers are straightforward. You get the household items and a small settlement. I get the business assets in the house. It's fair. Rita bit her tongue. Fair. After 5 years of marriage and all her contributions, Trevor thought household items and a small settlement were fair? Maybe we could talk about it more when you get back from your trip, Rita suggested. There was a pause. What trip? Your honeymoon trip to the Bahamas with Candace. You mentioned it yesterday. Another pause. Longer this time. Rita, we're not calling it a honeymoon trip. It's just a vacation. Of course. I'm sorry. I'm still adjusting to everything. After they hung up, Rita smiled. Trevor was getting nervous. Good. He'd expected her to sign his papers immediately and disappear from his life. Instead, she'd hired a lawyer and was asking questions. For the first time since she'd found those photos, Rita felt like she had some power. Her phone buzzed with a text from Patricia. Emergency injunction granted. Your husband cannot move any marital assets until the case is resolved. Also, forensic accountant found some very interesting offshore accounts. Call me tomorrow. Rita read the message twice. Offshore accounts? Trevor had money hidden offshore? Rita poured herself a glass of wine and sat on the couch she'd picked out when they first moved in together. Tomorrow, Trevor would find out that his assets were frozen. He'd realized that his generous divorce papers weren't going to be signed without a fight. Rita raised her glass in a toast to her reflection in the dark window. Here's to the woman I used to be, she said aloud. And here's to the woman I'm about to become. Trevor thought he'd planned the perfect crime. He'd stolen her money, her trust, and her future while setting himself up with a younger woman and a fortune. But Trevor had made one crucial mistake. He'd underestimated his wife. Rita was done being underestimated. Rita's phone rang at 7 in the morning. Trevor's voice was sharp with panic. Rita, what did you do? I can't access my business accounts. The bank says there's some kind of legal hold. Rita, who'd been expecting this call, made her voice confused and sleepy. What do you mean? I don't understand banking stuff. Don't play dumb with me. Your lawyer did something. All my accounts are frozen. I don't know anything about that. Patricia just said she wanted to review the papers before I sign them. This is ridiculous. Those are my business accounts. My money. You have no right to touch them. Rita sat up in bed, no longer pretending to be confused. Actually, Trevor, according to the law, any money earned during our marriage is marital property. But don't worry, I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding. The silence on the other end told Rita that Trevor was finally realizing she wasn't going to be the pushover he'd expected. We need to talk, he said finally. I'd love to, but aren't you going to the Bahamas today? With Candace? That trip is postponed. I'll be over tonight. After Trevor hung up, Rita called Patricia. He's panicking. Good. Men like your husband count on their wives being too intimidated to fight back. How are you feeling about all this? Angry, Rita said honestly. And determined. What did the forensic accountant find? More than we expected. Can you come in this afternoon? I want to show you what we're dealing with. At Patricia's office that afternoon, Rita met Janet Morrison, the forensic accountant. Janet was a quiet woman with sharp eyes who spread documents across the conference table like she was solving a puzzle. Your husband is very clever, Janet said. But not as clever as he thinks. Look at this. Janet showed Rita a complex chart tracking money movements over the past 3 years. Trevor has been systematically moving marital assets into accounts you don't know about. Shell companies, offshore investments, property in other states. How much money are we talking about? So far, I've traced $1.7 million that should be marital property. And I'm not done looking. Rita stared at the numbers. $1.7 million? Where did all that money come from? Patricia leaned forward. Your husband's business has been much more successful than he led you to believe. While you were managing his schedule and handling his communications, he was landing multi-million-dollar consulting contracts. Contracts I helped him get, Rita realized. I introduced him to half his biggest clients through my old job connections. Exactly. You weren't just his wife, you were his business partner. But he's been hiding the profits from you. Janet pulled out another document. Look at this property record. He bought a condo in Miami 18 months ago. Cost, $650,000. Paid in cash. Rita's head spun. I had no idea. There's more. He's got investment accounts, a boat registered in Delaware, and what looks like a second business he's been running on the side. Patricia's voice was grim. Rita, your husband has been stealing from you for years. What about Candace? Is she involved? Janet nodded. Oh yes. She's listed as a co-owner on several accounts and the Miami condo deed. She's been helping him hide assets. Rita felt sick. It wasn't just an affair. Trevor and Candace had been partners in stealing her future. While Rita had been the loyal wife, they'd been laughing at her stupidity and planning their rich life together. Can we get the money back? We're going to get every penny, Patricia said firmly. Plus damages. Your husband committed fraud, and in this state, fraud can void a prenup if you'd had one and entitle you to more than half the marital assets. What do I need to do? Keep playing the confused wife for now. Let him think he's still in control. Meanwhile, we're going to trace every hidden account and document every lie he's told. When we're done, he's going to wish he'd been honest from the beginning. That evening, Trevor arrived at the house looking haggard. Rita met him at the door wearing her sad, confused expression. Hi, she said quietly. How was your day? Terrible, thanks to your lawyer. Rita, you have to call off this investigation. It's costing both of us money for no reason. Rita led him to the living room and sat down across from him. I just want to understand what's happening. Everything is so confusing. There's nothing confusing about it. We're getting divorced. I keep my business, you get a fair settlement. Simple. But Patricia says the business might be worth more than you told me. Trevor's jaw tightened. Patricia is fishing for a bigger fee. She's feeding you lies to drag this out. What about the Miami condo? Trevor went very still. What Miami condo? Rita kept her expression innocent. The one Patricia mentioned. She said you own property in Miami. That's not relevant to our divorce. It's a business investment. Oh. Well, if it's a business investment, then it should be listed with your other business assets, right? Trevor stood up abruptly. Rita, this is exactly what I was worried about. Your lawyer is confusing you with technical details. None of this matters. It matters to me. We're talking about our whole life together, Trevor. I just want to make sure everything is fair. Fair? Trevor's calm mask slipped. You want to know what's fair? Fair is recognizing that I built this business. I found the clients. I did the work. You answered some phones and filed some papers. Rita felt her temper flare but kept her voice level. I did more than that and you know it. Did you? Because from where I sit, I did all the heavy lifting while you played house. And now you want half of everything I earned. Rita stood up to face him. I want half of what we earned together. I gave up my career for you, Trevor. I used my savings to start your business. I introduced you to clients who made you millions. I handled everything at home so you could focus on work. That's not playing house, that's being a partner. Trevor stared at her for a long moment. You're not the woman I married. You're right, Rita said quietly. The woman you married trusted you. She believed in you. She would have signed your papers and walked away quietly. Rita's voice grew stronger. But that woman was naive. I'm not naive anymore. Trevor walked to the door, then turned back. This is going to get ugly, Rita. Are you sure you want to fight me? Rita met his gaze steadily. Bring it on. After Trevor left, Rita called Patricia. He's scared. Really scared. Good. Scared men make mistakes. And your husband has already made plenty of those. Rita hung up and walked through the house that Trevor thought he was going to take from her. Every room held memories of their life together, their real life, not the fake one he'd been living with Candace. But Rita wasn't sad anymore. She was focused. Trevor had spent 3.5 years stealing from her while she built his business and managed his life. Now it was her turn. Rita was going to take Trevor apart piece by piece, just like he'd done to their marriage. The only difference was when she was done, he'd have nothing left to rebuild with. Rita's private investigator, James Chin, looked nothing like what she'd expected. Instead of a gruff ex-cop, James was a soft-spoken man in his 40s who looked more like an accountant than a detective. But Patricia had recommended him highly, and after 2 weeks of investigation, Rita understood why. Your husband has been very busy, James said, spreading photos across Patricia's conference table. These were taken over the past 10 days. The photos showed Trevor and Candace at expensive restaurants, shopping for jewelry, and looking at what appeared to be wedding venues. In one photo, Candace was showing off a large diamond ring to a woman Rita didn't recognize. They're engaged. Rita asked. It looks that way. But here's the interesting part. James pulled out more photos. This is from yesterday afternoon. The photos showed Trevor meeting with a man in a suit outside a bank. They were exchanging what looked like documents in a briefcase. Who is that man? Robert Steinberg. He runs a company that helps wealthy individuals move money offshore. Very discreet, very expensive, and not entirely legal in how they structure things. Patricia leaned forward. Are you saying Trevor is moving money out of the country? That's exactly what I'm saying. Our forensic accountant was right to freeze those accounts when she did. Trevor was planning to transfer everything to accounts in the Cayman Islands. Rita felt cold. All of it. Every penny he could access. The Miami condo, the boat, the business accounts. He was going to clean out everything and disappear to the Caribbean with Candace. But we stopped him? James nodded. The court order froze his access just in time. He's stuck here until the divorce is finalized. Patricia pulled out a legal file. This is even better than we hoped. Attempting to hide marital assets during divorce proceedings is a serious crime. Combined with the fraud we've already documented, Trevor is looking at potential jail time. Jail? Rita's eyes widened. Financial fraud, tax evasion, contempt of court. Your husband has committed several felonies. The question is whether you want to pursue criminal charges or just focus on the civil case. Rita thought about Trevor's smug confidence when he'd handed her those divorce papers. His casual cruelty when he told her she'd get household items and a small settlement. His assumption that she was too emotional and stupid to fight back. I want him to face consequences for everything he's done. Patricia smiled. I was hoping you'd say that. James pulled out another folder. There's more. We've identified 3 other women Trevor has been involved with over the course of your marriage. Rita's stomach dropped. 3 others? Besides Candace. Affairs ranging from a few months to over a year each. He has a pattern. He targets women who work for his clients or in related businesses. Young, ambitious women who think he can help their careers. Did any of them know about me? 2 of them had no idea he was married. The 3rd one knew but thought he was separated. James's voice was gentle. Rita, your husband is a predator. This isn't about love or falling out of love. This is about control and exploitation. Rita absorbed this information. She'd spent the past month thinking Trevor had fallen in love with Candace and made a terrible mistake. But it wasn't a mistake. It was a pattern. She was just one of many women Trevor had used and discarded. What about Candace? Does she know about the others? James shook his head. Based on our surveillance, she thinks she's the only one. She has no idea she's part of a pattern. Patricia made notes on her legal pad. This information is crucial. It shows a pattern of deception and fraud. Any judge is going to see that Trevor's claims about an amicable divorce based on growing apart are lies. What happens next? Rita asked. We file our response to Trevor's divorce petition. We present evidence of his hidden assets, his fraudulent behavior, and his attempts to hide money. We demand full disclosure of all assets and a forensic accounting of his business. Patricia's eyes gleamed. And then we watch him squirm. That evening, Rita got a call from Trevor. His voice was tight with barely controlled anger. Rita, this has gone far enough. Your investigators are harassing me and my clients. You need to call them off. I don't know what you mean, Rita said innocently. Patricia just said she needed to understand our finances before I sign anything. Our finances? Rita, I told you my business assets aren't part of the divorce. But didn't we build the business together? I mean, I did work for the company for 4 years without being paid. You weren't an employee. You were helping your husband. Right. And wives who help build their husbands' businesses are entitled to share in the value, aren't they? The silence stretched so long Rita thought Trevor had hung up. Who told you that? It just makes sense. I gave up my career to help you succeed. I used my savings to start the company. I brought you clients. Isn't that what marriage partnerships are supposed to be about? Rita, you're being manipulated. Your lawyer is filling your head with feminist nonsense about being entitled to my success. Rita almost laughed. Feminist nonsense? I think it's called the law, Trevor. Look, I'm trying to be fair here. I could have left you with nothing. But I'm offering you a generous settlement because I care about you. How generous? $50,000 and you can keep your car. Rita was quiet for a moment, calculating. Based on what Janet had found, the marital assets totaled over $3 million. Trevor was offering her less than 2%. That does sound generous, Rita said finally. I'll definitely consider it. She could practically hear Trevor's relief through the phone. Great. I'll have my lawyer draw up the final papers. Oh, but I probably should wait until Patricia finishes her review. Just to be sure I understand everything. Rita. It shouldn't take much longer. She said she just needs to verify a few things about the business value and some property records. Trevor hung up without saying goodbye. Rita smiled and called Patricia. He just offered me $50,000. Out of $3 million? What a prince. Patricia's voice was dry. Don't worry. When we're done with him, $50,000 will look like pocket change. Rita walked through her house, seeing it with new eyes. This wasn't just her home anymore. It was evidence. Evidence of the life she'd built with a man who'd been stealing from her since almost the beginning of their marriage. But Rita wasn't the victim anymore. She was the prosecutor. And Trevor was about to learn that the woman he'd underestimated was about to become his worst nightmare. Rita watched through her kitchen window as Trevor pulled into the driveway. It had been 3 weeks since their last face-to-face conversation, and she could see the stress on his face even from a distance. Good. Let him worry. She opened the door before he could knock, keeping her expression neutral. Hi, Trevor. Come in. He looked around the living room like he was seeing it for the first time. Or maybe like he was trying to memorize it. The house looks good. Thank you. Rita sat down on the couch and gestured for him to take the chair across from her. She wanted distance between them for this conversation. Rita, we need to talk seriously. This investigation your lawyer is doing, it's getting out of hand. Rita tilted her head. How so? She's contacted my business partners, my clients, even my accountant. She's making me look like a criminal. Are you a criminal, Trevor? His face flushed. Of course not. I'm a successful businessman who's trying to handle his divorce with dignity. Then you shouldn't mind the investigation. If everything is legitimate, Patricia will find that out and we can move forward. Trevor leaned forward in his chair. Rita, I'm going to be direct with you. If you keep fighting me on this, I'm going to have to play hardball. What does that mean? It means I have lawyers too. And they've found some interesting things about your own behavior during our marriage. Rita kept her face calm, but inside she was curious. What could Trevor possibly have found? She'd been the perfect wife. Like what? Like the fact that you've been accessing my business email accounts without permission. That's a federal crime, Rita. Computer fraud. Rita almost smiled. You mean the email account you gave me the password to 4 years ago? The one you asked me to monitor for client messages when you were traveling? Trevor's confidence wavered slightly. That was for specific business purposes. Right. And as your unpaid business assistant, I was doing my job. Rita kept her voice sweet. I have all the emails where you asked me to check your accounts and respond to clients. Patricia found them very interesting. Rita. Actually, that reminds me. Patricia also found it interesting that you never paid me for all that work I did. Something about labor law violations when spouses work for family businesses without compensation. Rita smiled. But I'm sure that's just a misunderstanding. Trevor stood up and started pacing. This is insane. You're turning our marriage into a business transaction. No, Trevor. You did that when you started hiding money and planning to steal everything we built together. I'm not stealing anything. It's my business. Our business. Built with my savings, my connections, and my labor. Rita's voice hardened. Did you really think I was so stupid that I'd never figure it out? Trevor stopped pacing and stared at her. You're not the woman I married. Good. Because the woman you married was too trusting. She believed in you. She thought marriage was a partnership. Rita stood up to face him. But you taught me better. You taught me that marriage is a business transaction. So let's treat it like one. Rita, please. Let's not destroy each other over this. We had 5 good years together. We had 5 years together. You had 3.5 good years with other women. Trevor's face went pale. What are you talking about? I know about all of them, Trevor. Not just Candace. All of them. Trevor sat down heavily. Rita. Here's what's going to happen, Rita continued, her voice steady and cold. You're going to provide complete financial disclosure of all your assets. All of them. The offshore accounts, the Miami condo, the boat, the shell companies, everything. Then you're going to agree to split all marital assets 50-50, plus compensation for my unpaid labor. And if I don't? Rita smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. Then Patricia files criminal charges for fraud, tax evasion, and contempt of court. Your business partners and clients learn about your legal troubles. The IRS gets copies of all your hidden accounts. And Candace learns about your other girlfriends. Trevor was quiet for a long moment. You've changed. Yes, I have. I used to think the best of people. I used to believe that if you loved someone and treated them well, they'd do the same for you. Rita's voice softened slightly. You taught me that wasn't true. So thank you for that lesson. Rita, I never meant for it to happen this way. Yes, you did. You planned this for years. You moved money, hid assets, and built an exit strategy while I was building our life together. Rita walked to the door. The only thing you didn't plan for was me fighting back. After Trevor left, Rita called Patricia to report on the conversation. How do you feel? Patricia asked. Powerful, Rita said honestly. For the first time in years, I feel like I have control over my own life. Good. Because the court date is set for next month. Are you ready to face him in front of a judge? Rita thought about the woman she'd been a month ago. Trusting, naive, willing to sign whatever papers Trevor put in front of her. That woman was gone. I'm ready. That night, Rita got a text message from an unknown number. You should know Trevor is still seeing other women. Even while engaged to Candace. Thought you should know. A friend. The message included photos of Trevor with a young blonde woman at a hotel bar. The photos were time-stamped from 2 days ago. Rita forwarded the message to Patricia with a note. More evidence. Trevor wasn't just a cheating husband. He wasn't just a financial fraud. He was a serial liar who couldn't be faithful to anyone, including the woman he'd left his wife for. Rita almost felt sorry for Candace. Almost. But Candace had chosen to help Trevor steal from his wife. She'd made her bed. Now they could both lie in it. Separately. Rita poured herself a glass of wine and sat on her back porch, looking at the garden she'd planted 3 years ago. The roses were blooming, the vegetables were growing strong, and everything she'd nurtured was thriving. Just like she was. Rita woke up on the morning of her divorce feeling calmer than she had in months. She dressed carefully in a navy blue suit that was professional but not flashy, did her makeup with a light hand, and pulled her hair back in a simple bun. She wanted to look like the competent woman she'd become, not the broken wife Trevor expected to see. Patricia met her at the courthouse steps. Ready for this? More than ready. They walked through security and down the hallway to Family Court 3. Rita could see Trevor and his lawyer through the glass doors. Trevor was wearing his most expensive suit and had gotten a fresh haircut. He looked confident, successful, like a man who expected to win. Sitting next to him in the gallery was Candace. She was wearing a white dress that was inappropriately bridal for a divorce hearing, and the diamond ring on her finger caught the light every time she moved her hands. She kept whispering in Trevor's ear and touching his arm possessively. Subtle, Patricia muttered. Rita felt a moment of satisfaction. Trevor had brought Candace to intimidate her, to show her what she'd lost. Instead, he just provided more evidence of his affair and his poor judgment. Judge Martinez called the court to order. She was a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense manner who looked like she'd seen every divorce trick in the book. Trevor's lawyer, a slick man named Richard Cross, spoke first. Your Honor, this is a straightforward divorce between two people who have simply grown apart. Mr. Coleman has offered a generous settlement that would allow both parties to move on with their lives. Judge Martinez looked at the papers. Mr. Cross, I see that your client is offering Mrs. Coleman $50,000 out of what appears to be several million in marital assets. Can you explain how this is generous? Your Honor, Mr. Coleman built his business through his own efforts and expertise. Mrs. Coleman was not involved in the day-to-day operations of the company. Patricia stood up. Objection, Your Honor. We have extensive evidence that Mrs. Coleman was instrumental in building the business and that Mr. Coleman has been systematically hiding marital assets. Overruled, Mr. Cross. But I want to hear this evidence, Ms. Williams. Patricia walked to the evidence table. Your Honor, Mrs. Coleman contributed $50,000 of her personal savings to start her husband's business. She worked as his unpaid assistant for 4 years, managing his schedule, handling client communications, and bringing him new business through her professional connections. During this time, Mr. Coleman has been moving marital assets into hidden accounts and attempting to transfer money offshore. Trevor's lawyer jumped up. Your Honor, these are baseless accusations. Are they? Judge Martinez looked at the documents Patricia handed her. Ms. Williams, do you have proof of these hidden assets? We do, Your Honor. Our forensic accountant has identified over $3 million in assets that Mr. Coleman failed to disclose in his initial filing. Judge Martinez's eyebrows rose. $3 million? Janet Morrison stood up. Your Honor, I've prepared a detailed report showing offshore accounts, undisclosed properties, and business assets that were systematically hidden from Mrs. Coleman. Rita watched Trevor's face as Janet presented her findings. His confident expression was cracking. Candace had stopped whispering and was staring at him with a confused look. Furthermore, Patricia continued, we have evidence that Mr. Coleman has been engaged in an extramarital affair for over 3 years and has been planning this divorce while hiding assets to avoid sharing them with his wife. Judge Martinez looked directly at Trevor. Mr. Coleman, you filed papers claiming your business was worth approximately $200,000. Ms. Williams is presenting evidence that it's worth over $2.3 million. Can you explain this discrepancy? Trevor stood up, looking less confident than when he'd arrived. Your Honor, business valuations can be subjective. The figure I provided was conservative. Conservative? Judge Martinez's voice was sharp. Mr. Coleman, hiding assets during divorce proceedings is a serious offense. Did you or did you not attempt to transfer marital funds to offshore accounts? Trevor's lawyer whispered urgently in his ear. Your Honor, my client exercises his Fifth Amendment rights regarding that question. The courtroom went quiet. Rita felt a surge of satisfaction. Trevor had just admitted his guilt by refusing to answer. Judge Martinez looked at the gallery where Candace was sitting. Young lady, are you engaged to Mr. Coleman? Candace stood up nervously. Yes, Your Honor. Are you aware that he's still married? Well, yes, but they're getting divorced. Are you also aware that you've been named as a co-conspirator in hiding marital assets? According to these documents, you're listed as a co-owner on several accounts that should be marital property. Candace's face went white. I don't know anything about that. Patricia stood up again. Your Honor, we have evidence that Ms. Brooks has been helping Mr. Coleman hide assets for over 2 years. She's been an active participant in defrauding Mrs. Coleman. Judge Martinez studied the documents for several long minutes. The courtroom was completely silent. Rita could hear Trevor's heavy breathing from across the room. Mr. Coleman, Judge Martinez said finally, this is one of the most egregious cases of marital fraud I've seen in 20 years on the bench. You've attempted to steal millions of dollars from your wife while conducting multiple extramarital affairs. Your Honor, Trevor's lawyer tried to interrupt. I'm not finished. Judge Martinez's voice cut through the room. Mr. Coleman, you have systematically hidden assets, lied under oath, and attempted to flee the country with stolen funds. Ms. Brooks, you have aided and abetted these crimes. Rita felt like she was watching a movie. This was better than she'd ever hoped for. Therefore, Judge Martinez continued, I'm ordering the immediate seizure of all assets pending a complete forensic accounting. I'm also ordering Mr. Coleman to surrender his passport and requiring both Mr. Coleman and Ms. Brooks to remain in the jurisdiction pending potential criminal charges. Candace started crying. Trevor looked like he was going to be sick. Furthermore, given the evidence of fraud and hidden assets, I'm awarding Mrs. Coleman 70% of all marital assets as damages for her husband's criminal behavior. This court will reconvene in 30 days for final disposition. Judge Martinez banged her gavel. Court is adjourned. Rita sat perfectly still for a moment, absorbing what had just happened. She'd won. Not just won, she'd destroyed Trevor's entire plan. Patricia was grinning. 70% Rita. That's almost unheard of in divorce cases. Rita looked over at Trevor, who was arguing frantically with his lawyer. Candace was still crying and seemed to be asking him questions he couldn't answer. Rita stood up and walked past their table on her way out of the courtroom. Trevor looked up at her with an expression of pure hatred. You destroyed my life, he said quietly. Rita stopped and looked down at him. No, Trevor. You destroyed your own life. I just made sure you didn't destroy mine too. As Rita walked out of the courthouse with Patricia, she could hear Candace's voice behind them. Trevor, what did she mean about other women? What aren't you telling me? Rita smiled. Trevor's house of lies was finally collapsing, and she was walking away from the wreckage with her head held high. Rita was having coffee on her back porch the next morning when her phone rang. It was Patricia and she sounded excited. Rita, you need to see the news. Turn on channel 7. Rita grabbed her phone and pulled up the local news website. The headline made her gasp. Local business owner arrested for financial fraud. The article had Trevor's photo and described his arrest for embezzlement, tax evasion, and wire fraud. According to the report, the FBI had raided his office and found evidence that he'd been stealing from his business clients as well as hiding money from his wife. This is bigger than we thought, Patricia said when Rita called her back. The criminal investigation started because of our divorce case, but they found evidence that Trevor has been running a Ponzi scheme through his consulting business. A Ponzi scheme? Rita's head spun. What does that mean? It means he was using new client money to pay returns to old clients while skimming millions for himself. Several of his clients have lost their life savings. Rita felt sick. How many people did he hurt? At least 20 families that we know of so far. The FBI thinks there might be more. Patricia's voice was grim. Rita, your husband isn't just a cheating spouse who hid money. He's a career criminal. Rita hung up and stared at her phone. She thought Trevor was just selfish and unfaithful. She hadn't realized he was actually evil. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is Candace. Can we talk? Rita stared at the message for a long moment. She had no interest in talking to the woman who'd helped destroy her marriage. But she was curious about what Candace wanted. What do you want? Rita texted back. I need to see you. Please. I'll come to you. Against her better judgment, Rita texted her address. An hour later, Candace knocked on Rita's door. She looked terrible, no makeup, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, wearing jeans and a t-shirt instead of her usual designer outfits. Her eyes were red from crying. Thank you for seeing me, Candace said when Rita let her in. Rita led her to the living room but didn't offer her anything to drink. What do you want? Candace sat on the edge of the couch like she was ready to run. I want to tell you the truth. About everything. A little late for that, don't you think? I know. But I need you to understand that I didn't know. About the money, about the other women, about any of it. Rita crossed her arms. You knew he was married. Yes, but he told me you were getting divorced anyway. He said you'd grown apart and were just waiting for the paperwork. Candace's voice was barely a whisper. He said you didn't love each other anymore. And you believed him? I wanted to believe him. I was 24 when we met. He was successful and charming and he made me feel special. Candace wiped her eyes. I thought I was helping him transition to a new life, not destroying his marriage. Rita studied Candace's face. She looked genuinely devastated, but Rita wasn't sure if she could trust anything this woman said. What about the money? You were listed on accounts, properties? He told me those were business investments. He said successful couples shared finances and he wanted me to be part of his business empire. Candace laughed bitterly. I thought I was being included in his success, not helping him steal from you. How could you not know? Rita's voice was sharper than she intended. You worked for him. You saw his files, his schedule, his communications. I only saw what he wanted me to see. And I was in love. Or I thought I was. Candace looked up at Rita. I found out about the other women yesterday. After the court hearing, I went through his phone while he was in the shower. There were photos, messages, dating app profiles. Rita, he's been cheating on both of us. Rita wasn't surprised, but she was curious. How many others? I found evidence of at least 5 different women over the past 2 years. Some of them overlapped with our relationship. Candace's voice broke. I thought I was special. I thought we had something real. Rita almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Candace, I can't help you. And I'm not going to forgive you for what you did to my marriage. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking for a chance to make this right. What do you mean? Candace reached into her purse and pulled out a thick envelope. These are copies of everything I could find in Trevor's office before the FBI seized it. Financial records, client lists, communications about moving money. I thought you and your lawyer might need them for the criminal case. Rita took the envelope but didn't open it. Why would you help me? Because Trevor destroyed both of our lives and I think he should pay for it. Because those families who lost their money deserve justice. And because... Candace paused. Because I finally understand what kind of man I was involved with. Rita looked at the young woman sitting in her living room. Candace was exactly what Trevor preferred: young, naive, impressed by his success. Rita had been like that once too. What will you do now? Rita asked. I don't know. The FBI wants me to testify against Trevor. My lawyer says I might face charges myself, even though I didn't know what he was doing. Candace stood up. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry. Not just for the affair, but for being too stupid to see what he really was. After Candace left, Rita called Patricia and told her about the visit. Did she seem genuine? Patricia asked. I think so. She seemed broken. Rita opened the envelope Candace had left. It was full of documents she didn't understand. She left a bunch of financial papers. Bring them to my office. If they're what I think they are, they could help the FBI's case significantly. That evening, Rita watched the news coverage of Trevor's arrest. The reporter stood outside his office building, describing how the FBI had found evidence of a massive fraud scheme. Several of Trevor's victims were interviewed, including an elderly couple who'd lost their retirement savings. Rita turned off the TV and sat in her quiet house. A month ago, she'd been planning her anniversary dinner with a man she thought she loved. Now that same man was facing decades in prison for destroying the lives of innocent people. Rita felt grateful that she'd found out the truth before it was too late. If she'd signed Trevor's original divorce papers, she would have walked away with nothing while he and Candace disappeared to the Caribbean with millions of stolen dollars. Instead, Trevor was in jail, Candace was facing her own legal troubles, and Rita was about to become a very wealthy woman. Sometimes justice was served after all. 2 weeks after Trevor's arrest, Rita sat in the FBI field office giving her statement to Agent Sarah Thompson. The agent was a serious woman in her 40s who'd been investigating financial crimes for over a decade. Mrs. Coleman, your evidence has been crucial to our case, Agent Thompson said. Without your divorce attorney's forensic investigation, we might never have discovered the full scope of your husband's crimes. Rita shifted in her chair. It still felt surreal to be in an FBI office talking about her husband's criminal enterprise. How many people did he hurt? We've identified 37 victims so far, with total losses of approximately $8 million. Some of these families lost everything: their retirement savings, their children's college funds, money they'd saved for decades. Rita felt sick. I had no idea. We don't believe you did. Your husband was very good at compartmentalizing his life. He kept his criminal activities separate from his marriage, which is why you didn't see the warning signs. Agent Thompson pulled out a file. We're also investigating Ms. Brooks. While she claims she didn't know about the fraud, she did sign documents and access accounts. She may face charges for money laundering. What about the money? Will the victims get their savings back? We've frozen all of Trevor's assets: the offshore accounts, the property, the business assets, everything. Once the criminal case is resolved, we'll distribute the recovered funds to the victims through a court-supervised process. Rita nodded. What does that mean for my divorce settlement? Your divorce attorney can explain the details, but essentially you'll receive your portion of the legitimate marital assets after the victims are compensated for their losses. Rita met with Patricia that afternoon to discuss the implications. The good news is that we identified the assets early, Patricia explained. If Trevor had succeeded in hiding the money offshore, the victims would have lost everything. As it stands, they'll recover about 60% of their losses. And what about my settlement? You'll still receive approximately $800,000 from the legitimate business assets and the house. The rest will go to victim compensation. Patricia leaned forward. I know it's less than we originally calculated, but Rita, you're helping return stolen money to families who desperately need it. Rita didn't hesitate. That's exactly what should happen. Those people deserve their money back more than I deserve to profit from Trevor's crimes. That evening, Rita got a call from her sister Denise. I saw the news about Trevor. Are you okay? Rita looked around her living room now, since Trevor was in jail and couldn't claim any property. I'm better than okay. I'm free. Free. Free from a man who lied to me every day for years. Free from a marriage that was built on deception. Free to build whatever life I want now. But aren't you angry? He put you through hell. Rita considered the question. I was angry. I was hurt. But now I just feel relieved. Relieved that I found out who he really was before I wasted any more of my life on him. 2 days later, Rita received an unexpected visitor. Mrs. Henderson was a woman in her 70s who'd lost $200,000, her entire life savings, to Trevor's scheme. I hope you don't mind me coming here, Mrs. Henderson said when Rita invited her in. I got your address from the court records. I just wanted to thank you. Thank me? If you hadn't fought that divorce, if you hadn't hired that investigator, my husband and I would never have gotten our money back. We would have lost everything. Rita made tea and listened as Mrs. Henderson told her story. She and her husband had trusted Trevor with their retirement savings because he seemed so professional and successful. They'd believed his promises of high returns and steady income. We were going to lose our house, Mrs. Henderson said. At our age, we thought we'd end up living with our children or in some terrible nursing home. But now, thanks to you, we'll get most of our money back. Rita felt tears in her eyes. I'm so sorry you went through that. Don't apologize, dear. You didn't know. And when you found out, you did the right thing. Mrs. Henderson patted Rita's hand. You could have taken all that money and said nothing about the other victims. But you chose to help us instead. After Mrs. Henderson left, Rita called Patricia. I want to do more to help the victims. What do you mean? I want to use my settlement to start a fund, something to help families who've been hurt by financial fraud. Mrs. Henderson shouldn't have almost lost her house because she trusted the wrong person. Patricia was quiet for a moment. Rita, that's a beautiful idea, but are you sure? $800,000 could set you up for life. I don't need $800,000 to start over. I need enough to buy a small house and start a business. The rest should go to help people who really need it. Rita spent the next week researching victim assistance programs and financial fraud recovery. She met with nonprofit organizations and legal experts, learning about the gaps in the system that left fraud victims without help. By the end of the month, Rita had a plan. She would use half of her settlement to start the Coleman Foundation for Financial Fraud Victims. The foundation would provide emergency assistance to families who'd lost their savings to financial crimes, help them navigate the legal system, and advocate for stronger protections against fraud. The local newspaper wanted to interview Rita about the foundation. She agreed, though she felt nervous about the publicity. Why did you decide to start this foundation? The reporter asked. Rita thought about Mrs. Henderson, about the other families she'd met who'd been destroyed by Trevor's greed. Because financial fraud doesn't just steal money, it steals hope. It steals people's dreams and their security. Trevor hurt dozens of families and I can't undo that damage. But maybe I can help prevent it from happening to other people. Do you have a message for other women who might be in situations like yours? Rita looked directly into the camera. Trust your instincts. Something feels wrong, investigate. Don't let anyone, even your husband, make you feel stupid for asking questions about your own finances. And remember that you're stronger than you think you are. That night, Rita sat in her garden with a glass of wine and her laptop, working on the foundation's mission statement. 6 weeks ago, she'd been a naive wife who trusted completely and asked no questions. Now she was a woman with a purpose, building something meaningful from the wreckage of her marriage. Trevor had tried to destroy her life and steal her future. Instead, he'd freed her to become the woman she was always meant to be. Rita raised her glass to the stars. Thank you, she said to the universe. Thank you for showing me who I really am. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, Rita stood in the empty office space that would soon become the headquarters of the Coleman Foundation. Sunlight streamed through the large windows, and she could envision how the space would look once it was furnished, welcoming, professional, hopeful. It's perfect, said Jennifer Walsh, the executive director Rita had hired to run the foundation. Jennifer had 20 years of experience in victim services and a passion for helping fraud victims that matched Rita's own. When can we start accepting applications? Rita asked. Once we get the final permits and hire our caseworkers, I'd say 6 weeks. We already have a waiting list of families who need help. Rita's phone buzzed with a text from Patricia. Turn on channel 7. Trevor's sentencing is about to be announced. Rita found a coffee shop across the street and watched the news coverage on her phone. Trevor stood in orange prison coveralls as the judge read his sentence. 15 years in federal prison for wire fraud, money laundering, and tax evasion. No possibility of parole for the first 10 years. The reporter interviewed some of Trevor's victims outside the courthouse. Mrs. Henderson was there, looking healthy and relieved. Justice has been served, Mrs. Henderson told the camera. And thanks to Mrs. Coleman's foundation, other families won't have to go through what we went through. Rita turned off her phone and walked back to the foundation office. Trevor's sentencing felt like the final chapter of her old life. Now she could focus completely on building her new one. Her phone rang as she was measuring the space for desks. It was Agent Thompson from the FBI. Rita, I wanted to update you on Candace Brooks. She's agreed to testify against other financial criminals in exchange for a reduced sentence. She'll serve 2 years and then work with us to identify fraud schemes. How is she doing? Better than expected. She's enrolled in law school actually. Says she wants to help prosecute financial crimes when she gets out. Rita was surprised but pleased. Maybe Candace really had learned from her mistakes. That evening, Rita had dinner with her sister Denise at their favorite restaurant, not the fancy place where Trevor had destroyed their marriage, but a small family-owned restaurant where the food was good and the atmosphere was warm. You look happy, Denise observed. Really happy, not just pretending to be happy. Rita considered this. I'm happy. For the first time in years, I wake up excited about my day instead of just going through the motions. Do you ever think about dating again? Rita laughed. I'm not ready for that yet. I'm still figuring out who I am when I'm not trying to be the perfect wife. And who are you? Rita thought about the question seriously. I'm someone who doesn't give up when things get hard. I'm someone who cares about justice and helping people. I'm someone who's strong enough to rebuild her life from nothing. And you're someone who trusted her instincts when it mattered most, Denise added. After dinner, Rita drove through her old neighborhood. The house she'd shared with Trevor had sold quickly. A young family with 2 children had bought it. Rita was glad. The house deserved to be filled with genuine love and laughter. Rita's new house was smaller but perfect for her. A cozy craftsman bungalow with a big kitchen, a reading nook, and a garden where she was growing vegetables and herbs. She decorated it exactly how she wanted, with bright colors and comfortable furniture that made her smile. As she pulled into her driveway, Rita saw a package on her doorstep. Inside was a book about starting nonprofit organizations with a note from Mrs. Henderson. Thank you for giving me hope again. This book helped me start my own small charity 30 years ago. I thought you might find it useful. Your friend, Margaret. Rita smiled and carried the package inside. Her little house felt warm and welcoming, filled with things that mattered to her. Photos of her family, books she actually wanted to read, artwork from local artists, plants that were thriving under her care. She made a cup of tea and sat in her reading nook with Mrs. Henderson's book. Outside, she could hear children playing in the neighborhood, couples walking their dogs, life happening in all its ordinary, beautiful messiness. Rita's phone buzzed with an email from the foundation's lawyer. The first grant applications had been approved. 3 families would receive emergency assistance to help them recover from financial fraud. It was a small start, but it was a start. Rita thought about the woman she'd been a year ago, trusting, naive, willing to sign away her future to keep peace in her marriage. That woman seemed like a stranger now. She thought about Trevor starting his first night of a 15-year prison sentence. She felt no satisfaction in his downfall, just relief that he couldn't hurt anyone else. She thought about Candace, somewhere in a federal facility, hopefully learning to make better choices. And she thought about herself, sitting in her own house, building something meaningful with her life, answerable to no one but herself. Rita opened Mrs. Henderson's book and began to read. Outside, the sun was setting, but inside her house, everything was bright and full of possibility. For the first time in her adult life, Rita's future belonged entirely to her. She was writing her own story now, and it was going to be a good one. The doorbell rang, interrupting her reading. Rita opened the door to find a young woman holding a baby. Are you Rita Coleman? The woman asked. From the foundation? Yes, I am. My name is Sarah Martinez. My husband and I lost our savings to a man who sounds just like your ex-husband. Different name, same scheme. I saw your interview on the news and I was wondering. Rita opened the door wider. Come in. Let's talk. As Sarah told her story, Rita realized this was just the beginning. There were thousands of families out there who needed help, who needed someone to believe in them and fight for them. Rita had found her calling. Not as someone's wife, not as someone's assistant, but as herself. As a woman who turned her pain into purpose and her loss into someone else's gain. Trevor had tried to write the ending to her story. He'd failed. Rita was writing her own ending now. And it was going to be beautiful,